to introduce our first panel. The first panel will run till about 3 p.m. and then we'll take a short break and then we'll come back with our second panel. The first panel is moderated by a friend of mine who, like me, spent a good part of his life, I think, in Boston, Massachusetts, and his name is Mansour Ansari, and this is the first panel. Take it away, Mansour.
Thank you, Brian. I want to welcome everybody here again. I don't want to go through a long speech, but we have many luminary speakers today for you arranged. In a nutshell, this is the first anniversary of that dark day in Egypt when the people who lost the election and who have connections to the previous regime of Mubarak for 30-some years, who are well placed at the trough of Western and other help from outside to keep the people of Egypt backward. They got together with the military and decided to kill a few thousand people that we just saw some of the drama on the video. So they're also Egyptian citizens. They also have the right to vote for who they want to vote for. But they lost the election, got together with the military, and decided to shed much blood. We have people to my right who are very close to this situation over there, and we'll introduce them one by one. Sister Nahla on my far right is a French-Egyptian spokesman for the Egyptians Abroad for Democracy Worldwide, a telecommunications engineer, and holds an MBA in international business. Many of our speakers today were at a previous conference we had in Chattanooga, as Brian was saying, where we were able to bring a lot of academic and important thinkers on this subject together. So we're going to be running a little late. We'll never be done by 3 o'clock, but I hope that we can keep it succinct and leave time for the participation of the fine brothers and sisters and friends, ladies and gentlemen who came up here today. So we'll ask Nahla Naser to speak on her subject. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me today. It's an honor to be here among such incredible people and in a fantastic center. The past year has been an incredible journey for me as a person and as a young woman. The roller coaster of events and emotions have helped me to grow enormously and appreciate the words that one was brought upon and live them. The world is going through a very tough time right now, not only in terms of injustice happening in various parts of the world, but also the testing of our morale, moral courage, and value systems to the core, and how we as citizens of this planet respond to them. Social media has transformed communication in ways unparalleled in recent history. No longer are mainstream outlets the single provider of information. This has elevated activists' ability to transmit data, realities, and events in a timely and concise fashion. Video footage, photographs speak volumes in comparison to words, just like the video you guys just witnessed. This new era has helped every single woman and man, regardless of age, take hold of their own communication networks and decentralize the journalistic pool, which was monopolized in the past by mainstream. So why is this important? It's important because the downtrodden, the oppressed, and the poor around the world have means of release and means of connection with their global counterparts, without the interference of prejudice and bias. The world is waking up to a new paradigm, a world that has more similarities than differences, a world that relates to each other more than disagrees. All this primarily because the emotions, the anxieties, and the hopes are all pretty much the same anywhere in the world. The only reason why it's becoming more apparent now is because we are starting to talk to each other more and realize the perceptions of dividing difference were merely illusions and fallacies. So what does it mean? It means that mainstream journalism will be held to a much higher benchmark of accountability, that policymakers will need to address citizens' concerns with real and valid answers. No longer are the surface, deep excuses sellable to masses anymore. So I would like to speak very briefly about my Rabaa experience. I was in Rabaa for about 3 weeks. I've never been politically affiliated with any political group. I wasn't necessarily a supporter of the Brotherhood and did believe that Morsi did make mistakes, but I knew that it was completely wrong that a military would take over an elected government. And my experience in Rabaa have made me more sympathetic and more supportive of the Brotherhood after having actually lived with them in a square. My Rabaa experience were the best days of my life. I met the most sincere, genuine, and courageous people I have ever met in my entire life. They were the most respectful, and I have never felt so safe ever in my life. And that's why I decided to stay and to share my voice and concern with them. So the Rabaa experience was the best day of my life, but the Rabaa massacre was the worst experience of my life. I could honestly speak about Rabaa for days, but I think Mohammed Ismail would probably bite my head off and feed it to the pro-coup people. So I'll try and keep it as short as possible. But if anyone has any questions for me after the conference, I would be happy to answer them about my experience in Rabaa, why I stayed, why I was there, who I met, and what I learned from my experience there. So I'll quickly speak of 3 sisters that I met in Rabaa. I spent the entire 3 weeks with them. Some of the most respectful people. They instantly became my family. And exactly 1 year ago, on the 16th of August 2013, they were taken by the security forces from Ramses and they were detained with their younger brother, who was 17 at the time. They spent 3 months in prison on false charges and no due process. Luckily for me, I was able to actually see them about a month back. I went to visit them in Ireland for the first time ever since they had been detained. They described their experience in prison to me, and honestly, I can't even describe it to you. It's just, they experienced the most excruciating stuff in prison and in the most horrific conditions. I mean, you would probably not even believe me if I explained to you what they went through. So I respect them so much, and I really hope for their younger brother to be released soon, because he is still in prison for 1 year now and going. So my time in Rabaa is an experience I will remember and thankful for the rest of my life. Not only because of the people I met, but because of what I learned from Rabaa, from coming out of Rabaa. What Rabaa has done for me as an individual is that it has exposed the oldest lie in the book, propaganda. How fascism starts and feeds off of anger, hatred, and segregation of citizens. I look at the world now with new glasses, one where I do not see color, race, or religion. Rather, all I see are people, helpless suffering, and a world that can truly help, yes, help, but only if the will to reform ourselves was taken to heart and addressed. How can we call ourselves a civilized planet when children, young children, are mass slaughtered in daylight, when rights of human beings are sold under false propaganda? Values, principles are not words, they are a way of life. They are important because it sets the playing field to one of societal cohesion and solidarity. It is easy to regress into a jungle. However, it is thoroughly hard, yet deserving to stand up for these values. The payout for these principles being upheld is the global progression of humanity in every field, economically, socially, etc. Today, I feel more connected to you and all the incredible people I have met through these journeys than at any point of my young life. Thank you all for allowing me to speak and express my emotions and a cause that will always be close to my heart. Thank you again.
I really appreciate your presentation. For those of you who don't know, you see how she speaks English. Well, she actually lives in France. So together with Arabic, English, and French, if she stays in Atlanta long enough, she'll add